Hello, everyone. Good morning, good night, good evening, whatever time it is for you. Just waiting to go live with my guest, Jumanah, today. Yep, just waiting for her to join. If she's, hopefully she will be able to join. Oh, let me try that again. See. There we go. Hi. Oh, looks like you're connecting. Hi, can you hear me? Fingers crossed.
Is it all right now?
Yes, I can hear you at least. Still blurry, but I think we can make this work. Awesome. Hi, how are you?
How are you? I'm good. How are you?
Good. So I think we have a couple people live with us, which is awesome. So thanks everyone for joining us today. As mentioned, we're going to be talking about career empowerment, which is like a topic that I'm personally super excited about because I work in human resources. So I think it's just super important. But yeah, before we kind of jump in, why don't we introduce ourselves, Jumanah, and talk about how we know each other. So I am an HR professional and mental health advocate based in Austin, Texas, in the United States. And I have been connected with Jumanah through Talking Wellbeing. And Jumanah, I'll hand it over to you to briefly introduce yourself as well.
Thank you so much, Anvita. And firstly, thank you so much to Talking Wellbeing for inviting me to be a part of this. Thank you so much. And yes, I am a trainee psychologist and a student of counseling psychology in the final year right now. So I think that's about it for me as of now.
Awesome. No, that's a lot. That's a lot to have on your plate. And as we've been talking, I know you've been super busy. So that is fantastic, right? COVID season and trying to get everything done. But
super
awesome.
busy, but super happy as well at the same time.
Oh my gosh. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today then in your busy schedule.
No, thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Yay, awesome. So I think, when we were first meeting to talk about, like, what are we going to talk about on here? One of, I think, the topics that got our attention was talking about, especially in a time like this where there's job security is kind of, up in the air for a lot of people and it's a more difficult economy, is the identification of one's career, like the association of one's career with one's identity, right? And we were talking about where is that line. So I think that would be a great place to start. First of all, can you talk about your personal experience? How much do you identify with your career?
Okay, so maybe before I start off with my personal experience, for the viewers who are here, maybe you can do the simple reflection right now. What I'm going to ask you is, if I asked who you are, what would you say? Yeah,
that's a good question, because in my introduction I started with the fact that I was an HR professional.
So if I were to
try to identify, exactly. If I were to try to identify who I was outside of that, right? Let's do it without my job title. I would say I am a individual who's very passionate about life. I like to, I'm most passionate about empowering people. I'm an empowerer. is how I identify myself. And that happens through a lot of different avenues, whether that's my career or that's outside as a mental health advocate. I'm also a dancer. I'm a writer. I am a storyteller. I'm a collaborator. I'm a traveler. I'm an avid traveler. I'm a foodie. I love sleeping and daydreaming. So those are a couple, I would say, adjectives to describe who I am.
Yeah,
What about yourself?
that's what, and it's really nice to hear you speaking about a lot of other parts of your life, because what happens is I mean, to be honest, when this question was first asked to me, I was bummed. I was like, I didn't know what to say. I was like, okay, I am a student. I want to be a psychologist, but what else am I? So that's how it has been for us. Like, we've been, conditioned to this, to really identify ourselves with our career. So,
Yeah.
so this is, I don't know who wrote it, but there's this particular term called for this. It's called workism. That is the belief. I didn't know about it until maybe a couple of months back. I don't remember who said it, but workism is the belief that work is not only, that is necessary for your economic production, like what you need to live by for the money and all of that, but it's also the main thing about you. It becomes the centerpiece of who you are. And and that, when you think about it, it's kind of double edged, because it's good to keep your career, like to be passionate about your career, to be doing things, not just for economic production, like, okay, I want money, that's why I'm working. That's also the other side of it. But when you take work too seriously, that's what happens is you just tend to identify yourself with the work. Now, the, and what happens is it there's a lot of negative effects to that. So if you really associate your identity with, and your self-worth with your career, that's what happens. So if you really think about it, like, I get a lot of clients who come saying that I'm dissatisfied with my work, I'm really lost about what to do, or I just got laid off and all of that. Now, what happens is, if I don't know if you know, there is this exercise which we can do. It's called the Wheel of Life.
I've never heard of that. Please elaborate.
So it's a very interesting exercise to do.
Okay.
So that's like, you kind of draw a wheel, and you make different sections of it, like a pie chart kind of thing, and you identify different areas of your life, like your social life, your spiritual life, the environment you're in, your physical health, your relationships and things like that, and of course career as well. So when I do the Wheel of Life with my clients, I can see like how amazingly well they're doing in other areas of their life. But
cool.
They are in therapy because they just cannot deal with the dissatisfaction in their work life. So it becomes really difficult for people to see themselves beyond their career.
No, you bring up a really good point, because I remember when I first started therapy, right? I've had some personal mental health challenges, and that was the reason I started therapy. Is the defining factor was that I was very dissatisfied in my career because I wasn't in the right career at that time. So that's so funny that you say that, because that was one of my primary reasons. And I think, to your point about workism, I think it's because we spend so much of our time, right? I think by percentage, I'm not sure, but if you take 8 to 9 hours in a 24-hour day, that's a 33% of your life, at least, that you're spending at your job, if not more, because a lot of people work more than that. So I think that is why it's so easy to go to our career, and a lot of it is social conditioning. So it's really, I like that Wheel of Life technique, because I feel like, even like when I had to think for a second, like I had to think, like, what else is outside of my life besides my career? It wasn't something that came naturally to me. So I feel like if that's something you did regularly, then you would look at the other parts of your life besides your career. So I really appreciate that's a cool technique.
I'm glad you found it useful. You found it of something of value, and I really appreciate you for seeking help when you felt like you needed it. I think that's a really great thing to do. And I'm really happy for you. And I'm really happy seeing you where you are right now. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Oh, well, thank you. That means the world hearing it from a psychologist. I think you're going to be great. You already sound so knowledgeable about, and so passionate. I think when I talked to you, I think what I heard really defining was passion. So I think that would be a good segue into our next topic, right? So like, part of what we were talking about live is like passion and purpose, right? So one, where do you think, so we talked about like, yes, we're socialized to, actually, I'm going to backtrack. So we talked about socialization to identify with a career. But I think let's talk about how we both personally, like to what extent do we both identify with our career? So that, back to the question I was asking, right? Like how much do you personally identify with your career? Can you describe yourself outside of your career?
Right. So asking that question is like putting the spotlight onto me, because as I'm talking about workism, as I'm talking about not identifying with your career too much, in all self-disclosure, I do find myself sometimes identifying with my career, and it is something I am learning to unlearn. It's something that I am, telling myself, it's something that I've been reminding myself that, my work is not me, and to draw boundaries where it needs to be drawn. And especially with how things are nowadays, like you mentioned in the beginning, because of the pandemic, and there's just been so many effects, when you think of it, like it's like a domino effect. So right now, for most people, it could be really difficult to draw a boundary between the career or their education and their other parts of life. So I think if you ask me how much I identify with my career, maybe when you think of it on a whole, I don't identify with my career a lot right now. But at this point of time, it has been my priority, like as of now.
Got it.
And maybe for a couple of months it will be.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I think, my company has been doing layoffs. So it's been like, it's been something that's been on my mind. I feel like, a lot of, when you come to terms with something like that, you realize that stuff can happen. Life can just happen, and it can shake up your career at any point in time. And I think for me, I've moved towards trying to not identify as much and really trying to make sure I have balance in my life, right? I don't think this is about not spending time in your career. Similar to you, like my career is my priority right now. It's because I find a lot of meaning in it, right? In terms of what I'm doing. But that doesn't mean that I can't go do something else. And I do a lot of other things outside of my career that also give me meaning. So for me, it's balanced. And I think it's also coming to terms with like my identity changing and being okay with change. And that means that I'll be okay with change in my career. So I think for me, it's been a balancing act. And sometimes I do have to step back and like remind myself not to do it, similar to you. Like I definitely struggle with it. Oftentimes the first sentence out of my mouth is, I'm an HR professional. Like that is my career. So same to you, like as a student, right? So I think that's definitely a challenge. So moving on to like passion and purpose, right? We've both been kind of talking about like we are prioritizing careers right now. So what would you say is the difference between passion and purpose?
So now, when you were talking about how we are kind of putting our career first at this particular point of time, I think it has got a lot to do with the passion and purpose equation of things. So so when you think of passion, passion is something, maybe if I could describe it, it's something that's meaningful to you. And you want it, you crave it, it gives you happiness, and it gives you a lot of inner satisfaction, and the impact that is created is inward. Now, before thinking about purpose, so passion, when you reflect back, do what is passionate, do what your passion is, go behind what makes you happy. These are the things that we've been hearing, right? But the thing is, sometimes passion, happiness, these things are fleeting. It's not constant.
Good point.
At the same time, and that is because, like you said, we are changing all the time. Our priorities change all the time. Our choices, what we need changes all the time. But if tweaked at the right point, we can kind of at least have a sense, or at least have a sense to go behind our purpose instead of going behind passion. And if I could describe passion, I mean purpose, it would be something like doing something that you want to create an impact. Like it's not just an inward impact, it's an outward impact as well. And it is, I mean, this sounds very philosophical, but then it's like what you
Go
were
ahead.
put on earth to do, like what are you here for, and all those
Yeah.
existential questions.
Yes.
So the thing is, as philosophical as it might sound, I think it's needed to go behind those, you know, existential philosophical questions to actually, like, it's not always that a person finds their passion. I mean, finds their purpose in life. It's not like, okay, you know, your purpose in life is constant. It's this one thing. It's not like that either. But at least the pursuit, the awareness that, okay, I want to find something that is meaningful to my life. That itself gives meaning. Yeah. So also, it's not just me saying this, or it's not just you saying this, Anvita. It's like, I mean, research says that if like in career development, in career psychology, people who go behind passions and people who go behind their purpose, there's a difference in their success, in their continuity, and in their constancy in their careers. Because people who go behind their purpose, they find meaning and satisfaction in what they do. But then when people go behind passion, it becomes like it's just an exciting thing. It's not a constant thing, and it's not like humans are excited all the time. So going behind passions is like you have the good and you have the bad, and you know you want the good despite the bad in going for something.
Yeah.
But when you go for passion, when you go for happiness, it's just you're only expecting good. But that's not how it is. I mean, about anything in life. Of course, career also includes that.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point about passion being fleeting. I think one of the James will come back to. So one second, for you, those of you who can't see the screen, James asked a really good question about what role should finance play in passion purpose in terms of career development. So we'll come back to that. But I wanted to comment on your insight about passion being fleeting, because I think that's super important. I think a lot of us are conditioned to for the pursuit of happiness. I think that's a very, very sought after thing. And happiness is another one thing, like passion, that's very fleeting. Like, even if you love something, it's not always going to be positive. You're not always going to, passion's very hard to sustain, right? It comes, for me, it comes in bursts. There's days I wake up that I'm super like gung-ho, like, let's go. And then there's other days where I'm just like, oh my gosh, like there's going to be tasks that you might have to do that are associated with something you love to make it happen that you might not be passionate about, right? So I think it's super important to acknowledge that. And just because you're not excited constantly doesn't mean you're not passionate about it in general, right? Passion, like you said, can be, it's a roller coaster. It really is. It's one of those, all of these emotions that are so great or positive, so to speak, are roller coasters. Passion, happiness, like they come in and out, and they're associated with other emotions, and all emotions have their place. That's why I said positive, so to speak, because I don't really like characterizing emotions as positive or negative. And I think and like you said, passion is very so I think passion is a very inward thing. And then like you said, purpose is a little different. I think purpose is a lot more sustainable in terms of like you can feel a sense of purpose even when you're not passionate. And I think really, I think purpose is what keeps me going when I'm not feeling the passion sometimes. Like, it reminds me when I have a sense of purpose, that's my indicator that I'm still in it. I'm still engaged, even if I'm having a tough day. So I think I look at like purpose almost better as a measuring of whether I'm doing the right thing for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your thoughts are there. Yeah,
that really makes sense, and I completely resonate with what you're saying, because you know, some days you don't feel like, you know, honestly, some days I wake up and I'm like, oh, I just don't want to do this today, but then you do it, you still do it, you know, you still do it because you are driven by something that is not, how do you say, like based on emotions or based on what other people would think or feel or say. It's something very inward as well as outward. It has meaning to it. So what you said really makes sense.
It's greater than yourself. It's about more than you, and that's because when it's just about you and you're feeling like, oh, I don't want to do this, then like you're gone. It's gone, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like, oh, if I'm just
Yeah.
doing this for me and I don't want to do it, what's the point? But like when you're doing it
Right.
for someone else, like, I think this is why I want to live a life of service, because it's so powerful. Impact, or having an impact on someone, is so powerful to me that it keeps me going. It keeps me doing things because I'm like, I'm making a difference in someone else's life, even if I'm not in it, and
Right.
that at the end of the day, that brings me a different kind of joy that I can't really replace. So
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
purpose is a very powerful thing, purpose and meaning. So kind of going off of that, where do you think the line is in terms of, you know, pursuing your passion and purpose, and identifying, at the end of the day, identifying with what brings you passion and purpose?
Again, when you ask this question, I feel so guilty. I feel like I don't practice this, so why should I be talking about this? But I think it's a struggle for everyone, and that struggle is different for different people. It
Yeah.
when you really think about it, if you are passion and purpose is good, but then if you lose yourself even in your purpose, that is also unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
If you lose your sense of self and you only focus on that, because I honestly, when I started practicing, which is quite recently, when I started practicing therapy, I found myself it was so difficult to draw that line
Mm-hmm.
between what I can control or what I can impact and what I can't, because when you only talking about therapy, it's not like you can make someone change their life. Yeah,
Right.
you
Yeah.
can only facilitate that. So
Yep.
that was very hard. That line was very difficult for me to
Yeah.
draw. and
Fair enough.
and being in personal therapy myself, I would say I'm going towards drawing that line better.
Uh-huh.
And that day when we were talking, you said how work life balance is not really the right word to use,
Yeah.
and it's about work life integration, and I
Yeah.
totally resonated with that, because that was
Yeah.
new to me. That was really new to me.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something, that's a concept that I've learned from leaders who are above me, that I've been back in the field about 2 years since I
Mm-hmm.
graduated. And that I think was really insightful. Someone said that to me one day, and they were like, it's not work-life balance, it's work-life integration. Because that balance, I guess, so to speak, what you call
Mm-hmm.
balance, one, it's not a one size fits all. Like you said, it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
And two, it fluctuates in your life. There will be times in your life,
Right.
like for me and you right now, where like the emphasis on career. At some point,
Mm-hmm.
if we want to do something else with our lives, whether that's pursue something else or start a family, or
Yeah.
just any
Yeah.
other priorities, or shift, like start our own businesses, like who knows what else we're
Yeah.
going to want to do. That balance shifts, that it
Yeah.
shifts, which is why I
Exactly.
call it integration, right? How do you marry the two parts in a way that you're satisfied? That's kind of how I look at it. I think that's the ideal combination, is if you are
Mm-hmm.
satisfied with spending more time at work, then I don't like, that is the balance for you. Just
Yeah.
because someone spends 12, 13 hours a day or something, if they love it, if that brings them happiness, and if that is healthy for them, then that's
Mm-hmm.
fine. I think that is the
Yeah.
balance. I think the line is in terms of like where you lose yourself. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a better indicator than
Yeah.
any time, or any metric,
Mm-hmm.
is like, are you
Mm-hmm.
giving up your values? Are you giving up your
Mm-hmm.
character?
Yeah,
Are you
that's
giving
very
up
important. Yeah,
you,
that's very important.
right?
Yeah.
Where the
Yeah.
boundary isn't there. So how do
Yeah.
you, so you were talking
And
about
it's
learning.
not, yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Please go ahead. No,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking, when you think about balance, like what is the image that comes into your mind? It's like, I don't know, maybe like a rope, a tight rope,
Yeah.
tied at the end of one edge to the other, and you try to, kind of have that, middle path and go in that middle path. And that kind of indicates that it's 50-50. Like, okay, if your work is 50%, your personal life should be 50%. But then some points of time it could be 40-60 or 75, 70-30, and that's okay. And that, I think, is will only come from knowing, like, what are your priorities at certain points of your life. That's what you said. Like it's
exactly.
shifting. It could be, what if maybe after 5 years I want to take a gap here. I don't want to, work, and I just want to maybe travel, or I want to focus on, starting a family or something. That's also okay. That does not mean you are compromising your career. It's just the choice you've made for the priority at that particular point of time, and that's okay.
Exactly. I like that you validate that. It's okay. It's an individual thing, and you can make that choice, right? At the end of the day, I think sometimes, especially in South Asian community, like a lot of other people have a lot of things to say about what people are doing, but at the end of the day, it's about what it is for you. It is what it is for you. And James brings up weighing scales, which is like what I think of as the image of balance, actually, because I think in terms of like 30%, 90%, like, or 30%, 70%, sorry, might be like a balance at one time, 50-50 might be a balance. So I think that's a good analogy as well in terms of integration.
And as when James brought that up, I was just thinking, like, my star sign is Libra, and that balance is like something that would govern my whole life if I really believe in all of those things. But I was just thinking about that.
Well, in case anyone's wondering, my zodiac is I'm a fish. I'm Pisces.
Okay.
I don't really get into that much, but I like the memes. I do like the memes. Awesome. So I think I would love to go back to James's question earlier about the role that finance plays, right? So what role do you think finance plays in terms of relating to like passion, purpose, right? Like, would you how does that kind of drive someone in their career development, that kind of thing?
So the thing is, that is always the how do you say, but what about the money? That's always the question that people ask you when you're trying to pursue something, especially in areas of arts. If people want to pursue music or any performance art or creative art as their career, but what about the money? So that is unfortunately the way we live, and our world is kind of governed by that one particular thing called money. And it as much as it's sad, it's something that we need to also consider, because it's a mode of survival. It's not about anything else. And the thing is, it's something that should be taken into consideration, but not by compromising completely on the passion or purpose side of things. And unfortunately that needs to be done, because let's face it, capitalist world, and we have to always think about money and all of that, but that is what it is right now. So I think it's about like one example that just came into my mind right now is I met this person when I think last year during one of my travels. He was basically like a corporate world product or whatever. He worked a lot in these corporate world. It's all about money and all of that. But now after working for a few years in corporate world, he said that even though he was working in the corporate world, he never gave up the sense of purpose, where he wants to give something back to the society. And that was very impactful, because now what he's doing sustainable energy resources, kind of renewable energy, and he's trying to bring that into India, and he's meeting with different state ministries and things like that to bring that impact. So what I'm trying to say is, okay, money is there, okay, but just like try to see where your purpose lies. It's okay.
I think, like you said, I think it's possible to strike a balance. I myself have had my own journey with that. I definitely, I used to be an engineer, which I definitely would get more money for, if I was working as an engineer than I am in HR. But I think long term, the passion kind of can pay off, because when you're in a field for money and just money, and you're not passionate about it, you're going to hit a ceiling in terms of how well you're doing. I think you hit a ceiling, and that ceiling can keep you from actually making more money to a lot of people in terms of career development. And for me, in the long term, I'm probably actually going to make more money being in a field that I'm passionate about and can make some money from. So again, it's that balance It's about finding something, because in the long term, you have more potential in terms of skill. So you are more likely to get more promoted, or just not even just promotions, but just find opportunities and see opportunities where there are, because passion is an expansive energy. You bring it into a place and you see opportunities in places, because it's like I said, it's not constrictive. I feel like, you know, if it's just money. That being said, I'm not someone who's traditionally very motivated by just money. There are people out there who are very heavily motivated by money. So I think that's a good thing to talk about. You know, I think me and you are not one of some of those people. Like, we're somewhat motivated by money, but not completely. So like, where do you think, how do you think that works, right? What about the people who are really, really motivated by money?
It's honestly, it's a very, how do I say this? A very, like a topic that brings out a lot of fumes, I think, because people say, like, you know, okay, money is important, I need to have a comfortable life, but what is that comfortable life? What does comfortable life look like to you? These are the questions that we can ask ourselves. Like, what is the purpose money serves in our life, and what does comfort look like to us? The thing is, if I talk about it, it's basically my opinion, and that is my opinion.
Right.
So people, these are the questions that you can ask yourself. You know, what is the purpose of money in your life? What meaning does that give to you? And what is the meaning of comfort in your life? These are the things that we can ask. And is there something more than the comfort that I'm looking for when it comes to money? Is there something more I'm looking for in life? Do you like the direction of life that is being taken in terms of money? These are some of the questions we can ask ourselves.
Yeah, I think money, it's good. I like the questions that you're asking, because I think it gets back to, like, there's something behind that need for money.
Right.
Really, if someone's driven by money, it's not really the money that's a means. A lot of times I think it's security. You know, how do you think? How do you think that kind of plays into? How do you think people who of color have a unique experience there?
I think, I mean, there's a lot to think about in that, actually, because when you think of people of color, like South Asian communities, there has been a lot of oppression against, I mean, when I think of India, I mean, like, you know, colonized for 500 years, and, you know, that really, how do you say, that kind of shapes the way you think about things. So even when you think about, like, British India and things like that, it's like, you know, all the rich people in British India, they had everything. They just had to kind of, like, suck up and, like, you know, be like, okay, and they had everything. They had education. They could go to, you know, they could go outside to study and all of that. So it has become, you know, it's the system. It's a system that has brought about these insecurities in people. And to unlearn and to decolonize ourselves is to understand that where are these values coming from? You know, is it coming from inside of me? Is it coming from a true sense of purpose or true sense of contentment, or is it something that I'm doing because the world is this way? And how much am I identifying with that? These are some of the things we can ask ourselves.
I think that's great. I think you really bring up an important part of decolonization. I think that's involved in everything, like you said, that we do. It's systemic. You know, you might not even see where you're playing into some colonized beliefs. I think the want for money is one of those colonized beliefs, for sure. So I think unfortunately, as you know, people of color, for me, it's been interesting to look at the immigrant experience. You know, I'm the child of immigrants, and I think we've talked about, you've had some experiences, but money and security are especially being emphasized for immigrants. You know, and I think a lot of, you know, when I remember back in high school, when I was trying to decide, like, what do I want to pursue in higher education? Like, what is my degree going to be? You know, I think I landed on psychology initially, and my parents' first question is like, what are you going to do with that? It was already focused on the job, because that was an actual thing for them. You know, I think it wasn't so much like, oh, my parents are blocking my passion. They're coming from what they had to get to give me
Yeah,
that
yeah,
space.
yeah,
You know, they're coming
yeah.
from an actual need, and it's just so important to understand things like that. And it, like you said, unfortunately, it is a consideration, right? Going back to like money is a consideration because it does provide security, you know, and there's great inequities, and at some point, you know, even getting a higher education is, you know, a very small percentage of the population actually has that access. You know, me and you are very privileged in terms of the fact that we can do that.
It's an equality. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And there's always that fear of, you know, not being the downtrodden ones in the society.
Yeah.
And it's like that fear has been, you know, it's again like, you know, intergenerational. So even if there's no real threat of bankruptcy or like literally not having any basic needs met, it still is like, okay, but what about the money? And it has governed us to an extent where we think about it more than everything else. But we actually, like, a lot of people who are actually privileged think that they are, you know, going through a financial crisis. Yeah. So that's got a lot to do with understanding where our privilege lies.
I think it's so it's interesting that you bring that up, because I just thought back to when I first started my first full-time job after graduating from undergrad, and I had a lot of anxiety around my finances. I was working a very comfortable job. I want to put this in context. I was I had my own apartment. I had most of like the, you know, shelter, food, everything comfortably. I had money to travel, things that like you think about in the broad spectrum, very first world things. And I was over here stressing out about my finances, even just paying for like basic health needs. I would stress out about that when I really, exactly what you said, it really like there was no basis for it. But I think it's important that, you know, even if you live in the first world, like I think it's really important to be okay with, like, you are allowed to have struggles, because you have to acknowledge the struggles in order to take care of them. But on the same side, you want to put into perspective. For me, I do that a lot these days, is anytime I kind of start stressing about my finances, I acknowledge the stress, but I also put into perspective in terms of like what I do have, and appreciating what I have, and just the access that I have to things, and like having, again, a career full of passion and purpose, you know. And I think that's what it goes back to. So kind of on those lines, what about...
And one more thing I want to add.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make this point here. The anxieties that, you know, that you are facing, it's also, when you think about it, it's kind of driven by consumerism as well, and capitalism as well, because it tells you no matter how comfortable you are, there is always someone who is more comfortable than you.
Yeah.
And it's not about the comfort anymore. It becomes a little bit more than comfort. So yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. Because I mean, consumerism plays on that. That's the psychology, right? It plays on your need for, it plays on materialistic indicators of comfort. I think an important question you brought up before is like, what is comfort? What does comfort mean to you? I mean, I think a lot of us identify it first in terms of materialistic terms, instead of like, I have a car, I have a apartment or a house, I have, you know, I'm able to go out with my friends, like things like that. But really, I think this year has really put this into heightened terms for me, in terms of like, none of that really matters for me, and if I don't have a rich inner life. Hold on, I was saying, James made a really good comment. Let me diverge a little bit. He said,
I think we need to talk about that. Especially as South Asian communities, coming from South Asian communities, this is something that is, you know, it's rampant in South Asian communities, because when you are in 10th grade, it's already a given. It's already decided that you're going to take, I mean, in India, it's like you have to take the sciences, and then you become a doctor or an engineer. That's it. That's all there is. And so that's the thing. So I don't know what to say about that, except that it makes me really angry, because I have experienced the the effects of that, because considering people used to consider me as like, okay, she's capable and she's good at studies and all of that, so obviously she's going to become a doctor. But when I took humanities in my high school, it was such a shock for everyone. It was like I committed a crime or something. But I'm just, and I know so many of my friends, I know so many of my cousins who regret the career choice that they were forced into because of this concept of like there's nothing else except doctor, engineer, and maybe even lawyer is a third
Yeah.
option, but there's nothing more than that. So it's really really sad. Yeah.
It is. I mean,
So,
it's funny because I almost like walked myself into that trap. Going back to when I was
mhm,
trying to figure out what to do in college, I come from a family of engineers. That's what I saw. That's what I knew made money. And so I walked down that path. I pursued biomedical engineering. I finished the whole degree and realized I wasn't passionate about it. I could do it. And that's the other thing is I could do it to a certain extent. I was quite good at it, but like, I just wasn't
mhm,
passionate about it. I couldn't find it was empty. But I think the
yeah.
one thing I'll say, about people who may have felt like they were forced into a career, you can pivot, and I have done that. I
Yeah.
myself have
Yeah, and I think
changed my career
you are the
completely.
perfect example to talk about that, because
Yeah,
I just think that your journey has been really inspiring, and how you had that courage to go beyond all of what has been given to you. I think that's very very awesome. And
thank you
also
so much.
you being forced into this career, it's not your fault either, because you learn and you do what is around you. So I
Yeah,
mean, just as you, Anvita, I have a friend who chose engineering, and she really thought, that was the path for her.
yeah,
But it was something like it was kind of drilled into her rather than it coming from herself.
yes.
So I know you can. I can totally see that you can
You know
really relate
exactly
with
what I'm
that.
talking about. Yeah, for those who don't, like, just to elaborate on my career journey, which me and Jumanah talked about when we met. But I basically started out as an engineer, and I worked, and then by the time I got to my last year, I finished the degree, but I didn't. I wasn't as passionate about it as I thought I should be about a career that I'm pursuing. So I actually pivoted and did a job as a business analyst at a bank
Mhm.
as my first job, which is the job I was talking about where I felt like anxiety and went to therapy for. But that job didn't fit either. So basically, I'd landed on two things that I didn't like to do, and I didn't know what I liked to do. And I finally went back to graduate school for HR management, and HR is now my career. And that's
Mhm.
been kind of my passion purpose career. Like, I finally landed on it, but like, I wouldn't go back and change my journey because my experiences as an engineer, as a business analyst, bring a different perspective to my HR career. And I've seen that valued.
Mhm.
I've seen that
Mhm.
respected. And it's something different that I bring that my peers don't, all my peers don't have. So
Mhm.
I think your journey is meant to happen the way it is. And, even to
Yeah.
your friend, I'm sure her experience as an engineer, whatever she's doing now, it lends a dimension to that. And I think,
Mhm.
again, I will emphasize that if you want to pivot in your career, and years down the line, I might choose to do something else. I might choose to pivot out of HR. So, who knows? So I
Mhm.
think, to anyone, I'll say that if you want to pivot, if you feel like there's something else you should be doing, go for it. Do it. That is my
Yeah.
biggest piece of advice. And yeah, so, I think it's great that we talked about, and again, I have a lot of friends who are doctors because they really do find passion and purpose in it, right? So I think
Mhm.
pursue a career for that. It's hard. These careers are
Yeah.
engineering, doctor, lawyer. They are really hard. So I really would
Mhm.
say, like, evaluate where your want to pursue that is coming from. Is it coming from you? Because there are a lot of people I know who comes from two of my very, very close friends are both on the track to become doctors. So I think just evaluate where it comes from. I think ask yourself that and keep pursuing it if it's what you want to do, but don't. It's okay to pursue other paths. They're equally as valuable, equally as impactful, and it's really about what brings you that kind of what you need, sort of.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So James asked a question, I think, which we can pivot to in terms of what we were talking about. So, what should employers be doing to create a culture of workplace well-being? What do you think,
Mhm.
Jumanah? What are your thoughts on that?
I think so. The organization that I'm working with right now, the Alternative Story, I think they are doing an amazing job at that. But because they offer these mental health and well-being programs to corporate companies, and it comes under their EAPs. And I see a lot of companies actually taking mental health seriously, and they have, how do you say, like they have coaches in their companies, which is, I
Mm-hmm.
think, like as a starting, it's a great progress, like having
Yeah.
mental health and life coaches and career coaches in their company. And
Mm-hmm.
I do think, however, that there are many companies who do it with the intention of like actual well-being for their employees, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, it sometimes has the intention of like increasing productivity, and
Yeah.
which is fine if it, in terms of if it's healthy. But some, I have heard people complaining about lack breach of confidentiality and things like that from their workplace coaches and psychologists. That's, yeah, I've heard that a lot. So I think it's a lot about just awareness, like a lot about awareness. And
Mm-hmm.
even awareness of the employees of their rights, of what are their rights, and where the companies can sometimes cross that line. I think that
Yeah.
is also a very important thing, because the whole hustle culture, yeah, it's a normal thing for companies to just be like, okay, you have all these work, and then you end up just working till 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night from morning. And I think that, as I mean, it's a lot to do with the pattern and the kind of how things work in the world. But at the same time, if there is like a proper understanding of your own rights, and maybe standing up for your own rights along with the other employees, we can actually create a better and work environment. And for the employer side, I would say, come on, these guys are working for you, it's working for the company, just make sure that it's a healthy environment for them. So having that intention itself would promote better workplace well-being.
I completely resonate with everything that you just said. This is something that's very personal to me. I actually am sitting
Mm-hmm.
on the wellness committee at the my employer, which I think is super
Mm-hmm.
important. So I think the concept of our kind of wellness committee is that employees who are passionate about workplace well-being advocate for
Mm-hmm.
it in different parts of the
Mm-hmm.
company. Especially as an HR person, like I feel like that's something I should be doing, in terms of
Yeah.
like what I promote. But I think it's twofold. I think, yes, it's important to build a culture, but that culture can only be implemented or be impactful if it's on an individual managerial level, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've heard the saying, but a lot of people don't leave their employers, they leave their managers. Especially, I
Mm-hmm.
work at like a Fortune 500, especially in that kind of level of a company, it's very manager dependent. I've been lucky enough to, I've worked with managers who have given me positive affirmation for taking wellness days or taking days off, taking care of my health. And I think that's super important. I think training managers on how to, balance the well-being of their team along with the workload is super crucial, because it is
Yeah.
about the manager. It's about, one, telling your employees that it is okay
Mm-hmm.
to take care of their health first. Two,
Mm-hmm.
kind of defining how do you have that balance, right? How do you balance the needs with allowing employees to take care of
Yeah.
their well-being? What does that look like in terms of practicality, right? It's also about the manager exemplifying that, role modeling that, right? The manager should draw their own boundaries, and
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
I know some people like to work really, really hard, but if an
Mm-hmm.
employee sees their leader not taking care of themselves, then they're going to
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's an expectation, even if the leader doesn't say anything to them. So I think the
Mm-hmm. Right.
manager has a lot of responsibility in terms of promoting a culture of well-being. And I think the other end
Mm-hmm.
of that is the grassroots element of where employees actually push back and take care of their
Yeah.
own needs, and
Mm-hmm.
and don't get backlash for that. That's where the company's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
responsible,
Yeah.
is that they better
Yeah.
not be retaliated against if they're taking
Mm-hmm.
their time off, if they're taking, a mental health day, for example, or even a sick day. You know, they shouldn't be demoted. They shouldn't, you know, feel like their responsibilities are getting diminished. I think this is an interesting thing for women, because a lot of silent expectations can happen in terms of being promoted to leadership and stuff because they get pregnant, for example, which is not legal, but it happens at companies. And I think that's something we should definitely.
Really happens.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, I would expect in the US it would be a lot better when it comes to these things, but people don't hire women as because they think like, okay, she's just going to eventually get married and she's gonna like not work during those times and eventually get pregnant and then leave the company and all of those things. So yeah, that's a very, you know, inequality, and again, another topic where inequality comes in.
Yeah, I think, you know, we have a couple minutes left before Instagram kicks us out, but we could, you know, talk endlessly about this topic. But I will just say, just to close, you know, I think this discussion has definitely just gone in very interesting places. Thank you so much for all your insights. You've been phenomenal as a guest. We've loved having you. And yeah, I think with that, we'll close. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And you can find this on the feed. Thanks. All right. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.